In a forgotten town, nestled where the sun's rays grew weary and faint, there was a market. But one stall didn't trade in spices or silks. It dealt in secrets. Behind it, a man, his face perpetually cloaked in the shadow of a black hood, offered bargains that no sane person would consider, yet no desperate soul could refuse. They called him Idran the Whisperer, for he could take your deepest fears and desires and give them form. He didn't ask for gold or jewels. His price was far more intimate. He only wanted your voice. One evening, as twilight bled into the cobblestones, a merchant stumbled to Idran's stall. His face was a mask of ruin. His business had turned to dust. His family had vanished with his fortune. "I just want it back," he rasped, his desperation a tangible thing in the air. "I want my fortune again." Idran, a statue in the gloom, nodded with an unnerving slowness. "Then give me your voice," he murmured, his own voice a dry rustle of leaves, "and fortune shall find you." The merchant, seeing no other path, agreed. The next morning, he awoke to chests overflowing with gold, his shop gleaming with new life. But when he opened his mouth to shout with joy, a profound and terrifying silence was his only reply. Word of the silent miracle spread, not through spoken tales, but through envious glances and hastily scribbled notes. Soon, a procession of the town's discontented found their way to Idran's shadowed stall. A woman traded her voice for timeless beauty, her reflection now perfect but her laughter gone forever. A scorned man gave his speech for power, and his rivals bowed to him in a world devoid of praise. The town grew wealthy, its streets polished, its homes opulent. But a heavy, hollow stillness settled over it all. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, and the vibrant hum of life was replaced by an unnerving, echoing silence. It was a town of ghosts, living in a gilded cage of their own making. One night, a stranger arrived. She moved through the silent streets like a moonbeam, her cloak spun from what looked like silver dust. She stopped, her eyes scanning the faces of the mute townspeople, and asked for a place to rest. Her voice, clear and resonant, shattered the oppressive quiet. No one could answer her. Their gazes fell, their hands gestured helplessly. Only Idran, from the depths of his stall, met her gaze. His own voice, rarely used, was a hoarse whisper. "You can speak." A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. "And you," she replied, her voice soft but firm, "can still listen." Intrigued, perhaps for the first time in years, Idran asked why she had come to this silent, broken place. "I've heard tales of a man who steals voices and sells dreams," she said, her silver eyes holding his. "I came to buy the truth." Idran's hand, resting on his worn wooden counter, trembled almost imperceptibly. "Truth has no price," he managed. The woman stepped closer, the candlelight catching the silver in her gaze. "Everything has a price," she countered softly. "Even you, Whisperer." For the first time since he'd begun his trade, the crushing silence of the town pressed in on Idran, suffocating him. The shadows around his stall, once his allies, began to writhe and flicker. From their depths, he heard them, the whispered names of every person he had silenced, every voice he had stolen. A chilling realization dawned. He was not the master of this dark magic. He was merely a broker. He had traded their voices to something else, something unseen and ravenous, something that now, having tasted the souls of a town, was coming for his own. The woman's eyes reflected his burgeoning terror. "You never sold voices, Idran," she said, her voice a thread of pity in the darkness. "You sold souls." That night, the moon vanished, swallowed by an inky blackness. The air grew thick, heavy, and a low, resonant humming began to rise from every corner of the town. It was the sound of 100 stolen voices, a chorus of spectral melodies returning to collect their long-overdue debt. Panic seized Idran. He turned and ran, abandoning his stall, his dark bargains, his stolen quiet. But the shadows he had commanded for so long now gave chase. They flowed like a river of night, not to catch him, but to consume him. They were not chasing him. They were claiming him. When dawn finally broke, painting the sky in bruised shades of grey and purple, Idran's stall stood empty. He was gone. Only the woman in the silver-dusted cloak remained, a solitary figure in the nascent light. She looked at the vacant space where the Whisperer had sat, and her own voice was barely a whisper on the morning air. Every bargain must balance. Every echo must return. Then, she too was gone, melting into the morning mist, leaving behind a single, perfect black feather resting on the wooden counter. Days later, the people of the town awoke to a symphony. The chirping of birds, the gentle patter of rain, the distant sound of a child's laughter. And then, their own voices. They came back not as a torrent, but as a trickle, softer, wiser, trembling with the memory of silence and the overwhelming gratitude of return. They spoke to each other, their words filled with a newfound reverence. No one ever spoke the name Idrun again. But sometimes, when a sudden breeze rustled through the market square, they would pause, certain they could hear a faint, lingering whisper carried on the wind, a chilling reminder, nothing is free. Years passed. The town healed, its silence becoming a story told to frightened children, a legend whispered on winter nights. They spoke of the man who bargained with shadows, a cautionary tale against wanting too much, too fast. And even now, it is said that sometimes, when a person's heart is filled with a desperate, undeserving wish, the world around them falls quiet. The wind dies down, the birds stop singing, and an expectant hush descends, as if the shadows themselves are leaning in, waiting for an answer. For echoes never truly die. They only wait for their turn to be heard again.